At the time, Vanessa Bryant, Kobe Bryant's widow, was expecting. When she married Kobe at just 18, Vanessa was thrust into the heart of a bitter family conflict, a schism that would eventually splinter relationships with his parents, alienate teammates, and ignite disputes over fortunes. At one point or another, the finger of blame was always aimed her way. And this is the narrative they constructed about the woman who was left with it all. The Karl Malone incident and the subsequent implosion in the locker room. It began on November 23rd, 2003, during a game between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Karl Malone, the 40-year-old destined for the Hall of Fame, had joined the Lakers that season with one goal, a championship. That night, however, he was inactive due to an injury. Watching from the sidelines dressed in full cowboy gear, according to Rob Pelinka, Kobe's agent, Malone made his way over to Vanessa Bryant and asked, "Do you like me?" A question he allegedly followed with a crude comment about being on the hunt for little Mexican girls. Vanessa immediately told her husband, and Kobe confronted Malone face to face. The incident would later be discussed by Kobe in a televised interview. When pressed on why he chose to make the issue public, Kobe clarified that he wasn't the one who initiated the disclosure. The story had already leaked, and journalists were coming to him for a comment. Once the story from that radio interview started circulating, I was approached by multiple reporters, both on and off the record. He explained that his first instinct was to handle it discreetly, and my response to them was, "Look, this is a private issue. It was handled privately, and that's the end of it." But as distorted versions of the story began to surface in the media, Kobe felt he had no choice but to speak out. And then suddenly, I'm reading these articles and people are discussing the situation, but they're only telling half the story of what actually happened. When the question was put to him directly, did Karl Malone make a pass at his wife? Kobe responded with deliberate caution. "You know what? I know what happened. I know what I believe happened." He then signaled his desire to put the matter behind him. Beyond that, it's water under the bridge, man. I'm just focused on moving past it. My family and I, we are just trying to leave it behind us. Malone, for his part, disputed this version of events. In interviews conducted years after, he dismissed the exchange as harmless banter and extended a conditional apology to anyone who might have been offended. But he also sent another much clearer message. He stated his willingness to resolve the dispute with his fists, offering to knuckle up during a 2015 interview, and asserted that old-school fights were the proper way to settle such conflicts. That offer to fight remained open, unresolved. Kobe severed all ties with Malone from that point forward. Yet the fallout from the Malone incident extended far beyond a personal grudge. It shattered the fragile remnants of the team's cohesion. The 2003 to 2004 Lakers were already a powder keg, with the rivalry between Shaq and Kobe threatening to detonate at any moment. Malone's purported remarks about Vanessa introduced a new poison into the mix, creating another fissure in a locker room supposedly united in its quest for a title. The ensuing media firestorm only amplified the damage. News outlets sensationalized it as Vanessa Gate. Even Saturday Night Live produced satirical sketches about it. Detractors were quick to paint Vanessa as a drama queen, accusing her of manufacturing chaos within the team. Her defenders, however, argued she was entirely justified in reporting a teammate who had made remarks to her face about hunting little Mexican girls. The racial undercurrents, the blatant derision of her Latina background by an adult man dressed as a cowboy, cast an even darker shadow over the affair. A troubling pattern was beginning to emerge around Vanessa. With every new crisis, whether it was a family dispute or a locker room blow-up, her involvement was somehow framed as the root cause. She hadn't made the offensive comments. She hadn't initiated the conflict with Shaq. And yet, to the people in Kobe's orbit, she always seemed to be at the epicenter of the resulting devastation. The scale of that devastation was immense. The feud with Shaq alone was enough to dismantle what many analysts considered the most formidable partnership in the history of the NBA. The conflict's origins trace back to 1996, when a teenage Kobe was drafted onto a team architected entirely around Shaq. Almost instantly, the two stars collided over their respective roles, their contrasting personalities, and the battle for the spotlight. The tension even boiled over into physical violence. Shaq infamously slapped Kobe during a pickup game amid the 1998 lockout. Every failed playoff run was followed by a cycle of finger-pointing. By 2003, their animosity was public, with Kobe openly criticizing Shaq as overweight and unfit, while also accusing him of deflecting responsibility for the team's defeats. That same year, in the midst of the Colorado investigation, Kobe told investigators that Shaq had paid hush money to women to cover up extramarital affairs. That statement inevitably leaked, leaving Shaq enraged. Following their stunning loss to Detroit in the 2004 finals, Shaq had reached his limit and demanded a trade. claiming the Lakers organization showed clear favoritism toward Kobe. Once he was traded, the feud erupted into a full-blown public spectacle. In a 2008 freestyle rap, Shaq derided Kobe with the notorious line, "Tell me how my tastes." Kobe's retaliation came on the court. He went on to win 2 additional championships, and during the victory parade, he pointedly reminded the world that he now had 1 more ring than Shaq. But throughout this entire saga, Kobe was keenly aware of the narrative that pinned the blame for these professional fractures on his private life, and by extension, on Vanessa. When questioned about his own contribution to the isolation he felt from his peers, Kobe offered a rare moment of public self-reflection. "Yeah, I can't sit here and pretend, that I'm completely without fault in everything that happened." He conceded that he would change things if he could. "Man, if I had the chance to go back and handle some things differently, I absolutely would." With the Shaq situation, the Phil thing, and all of that. And this admission coexisted with all the other damning evidence: the teammate accused of harassing Vanessa from the bench, the implosion of a legendary superstar duo, and a locker room that had completely disintegrated. But the true origins of this turmoil predate any NBA rivalry. They trace back to a wedding ceremony in 2001, a ceremony that Kobe's own parents pointedly refused to attend. The marriage that set everything in motion. It was November of 1999. A 21-year-old Kobe Bryant stepped onto the set of a music video for the group Tha Isadaz. Working as a background dancer that day was Vanessa Bryant. She was only 17, a native of Huntington Beach, California, with a Mexican mother and a stepfather of Irish and Italian descent. Her biological father had been absent since her early childhood. Her mother, Sophia, juggled multiple jobs, including one as a shipping clerk, to make ends meet. The family was often forced to move, shuffling between the homes of relatives in Garden Grove and Huntington Beach. While still a student at Marina High School, Vanessa began picking up work, making extra appearances at hip-hop concerts and in music videos. Their relationship ignited instantly. And just 6 months into dating, Kobe asked her to marry him. On April 18, 2001, they exchanged vows in an intimate Catholic service in Dana Point, California, with a guest list of merely 12 people. She was only 18 years old. He was 22. And conspicuously absent from the celebration were his parents. Kobe's father and mother, Joe Jellybean Bryant and Pamela Bryant, made a deliberate choice not to be there. Both of them, not one, not the other. Neither parent was present to witness their only son get married. The prevailing narrative from reports at that time suggested their disapproval stemmed from a belief that Vanessa was too young, lacked maturity, and came from an unfamiliar cultural world. Both Joe and Pamela were African American. And according to numerous sources, including family, friends cited in outlets like People and The Sun, the core of the Bryant's objection was painfully simple. Vanessa was not African American. Deeply connected to her heritage, Vanessa embraced her Mexican culture, spoke fluent Spanish, and identified profoundly with her Latina roots. But those in their circle claimed that Kobe's parents had envisioned a partner for their son who was, culturally speaking, from a world much closer to their own. Their absence on that wedding day ignited a bitter 2-year estrangement during which Kobe and his parents ceased all communication. It wasn't until the arrival of their first child, Natalia, in January of 2003 that a fragile reconciliation began. Yet the deep cracks in their relationship had already set. The bond between Kobe and his parents would never completely heal. Meanwhile, simmering just beneath the surface, the resentment directed at Vanessa continued to fester. In later years, Kobe would publicly explain that his parents simply hadn't known Vanessa when he chose to marry at such a young age, casting the divide as, in part, a generational conflict. It was a classic story, a son asserting his independence against the wishes of his parents. However, the private reality was that the underlying tensions ran far deeper than a mere disagreement over age. Adding another dimension of complexity was the matter of financial support. Throughout his 20-year career, Kobe provided millions of dollars to his parents. This support covered everything from housing and lifestyle expenses to direct financial aid and cash payments for Joe, Pamela, and his 2 sisters, Sharia and Shea. While he publicly expressed pride in his sisters' independence, he also acknowledged his decision to end their open-ended financial dependency, explaining it was a necessary step for them to cultivate their own sense of self-worth. Despite this, persistent whispers never substantiated in any legal forum, but echoed within family circles claim that Kobe was directing a greater share of his resources to Vanessa's family than to his own. And that perceived imbalance, whether rooted in fact or fiction, became the toxic foundation for everything that was about to unfold. In a candid interview, former NBA player Sebastian Telfair offered his unvarnished perspective on the situation. Telfair revealed that the dynamics of the Bryant family resonated deeply with his own experiences. I'll be open because that situation, that conversation kind of hit close to home. He went on to explain how his own parents had disapproved of his ex-wife from the very beginning, and that defying their judgment ultimately fractured his own family bonds. My parents and my family did not like my ex-wife, okay? From day one. In observing Kobe's situation, he recognized the exact same pattern. It was the same archetype, a young athlete selecting his wife over the approval of his parents and facing consequences that no amount of money could ever repair. So when I see the Kobe situation, I'm just like, man, that's a really tough spot for him to have been put in. But Telfair's analysis went even deeper, pointing a finger at the NBA system itself. He argued that the league cultivated an environment where Kobe was expected to focus solely on basketball to the exclusion of all else. And that intense, singular focus, he suggested, makes it dangerously easy to sever ties with the very people who brought you up. But he was focused on basketball. That's what they want you focused on. Telfair's commentary didn't end there. He made it personal, stating that he could not conceive of any scenario in which he would sever his relationship with his own son over his choice of a partner. I don't know what he would have to do for me to go against him. And this very sentiment highlights the central issue. The marriage became the flashpoint for everything that followed. From 2001 onward, a single conviction took hold in the minds of Kobe's parents, that Vanessa's arrival in their son's life had resulted in them losing him. The endlessly debated question, was it her influence or his decision, became the unresolved heart of their conflict. For more than a decade following the wedding, the animosity between Kobe and his parents remained a quiet, simmering force. But 10 years on, that private argument would erupt into a very public legal battle, the memorabilia war. The rift manifested in subtle ways, such as Joe and Pamela making only sporadic appearances at Lakers game. And while Joe had a brief coaching stint with the WNBA's Los Angeles Sparks in 2005, the family unit remained deeply fractured. Even as Kobe continued to provide financial support, his parents continued to accept the funds, and the core issues remained unspoken. That silence was shattered in the spring of 2013, when the conflict exploded into public view. Pamela Bryant had arranged to sell a collection of over 100 pieces of Kobe's personal memorabilia, including high school jerseys from Lower Merion, along with trophies, medals, all-star rings, and two 2000 Lakers championship rings to Golden Auctions in New Jersey. Of those two championship rings, one was a gift Kobe had given to his father, Joe, while the other had been custom-made specifically for his mother, Pamela. In exchange, the auction house provided her with a $450,000 advance, which she then used to buy a house in Las Vegas. It was reported that over the course of more than 15 years, the storage fees for these items, kept in a Pennsylvania facility, had surpassed $90,000 a cost. Pamela had shouldered entirely. The moment Golden Auctions publicized the upcoming Bryant Collection sale on April 30th, 2013, Kobe responded with swift legal action, issuing a cease and desist and filing suit in a California federal court on May 7th. His suit asserted that the memorabilia was his exclusive property, which his mother had only been storing on his behalf, and that he had never granted her permission to sell any of it. He declared that his intention had always been to pass these keepsakes down to his own children, Natalia, and in time, Bianca and Capri. But Joe and Pamela refused to yield. Instead, they retaliated, submitting their own court declarations to a New Jersey federal court on May 13th, 2013. And those documents took direct aim at the credibility of both Kobe and Vanessa, with Pamela asserting in a sworn affidavit that the testimony from her son and daughter-in-law was riddled with falsehoods. The wording was pointed and deliberate. Pamela wasn't merely challenging her son. She was explicitly naming Vanessa in the fight. She accused them both of falsehoods in official court filings. At the center of the dispute was a May 2nd phone call detailed in Kobe's declaration, which Pamela swore never happened. Kobe alleged that during this call, his mother had acknowledged the memorabilia still belonged to him. Pamela's rebuttal was unequivocal. She insisted no such dialogue ever took place, and she had never made that concession. She maintained that the collection consisted of unconditional gifts, which Kobe had given her on numerous occasions, often saying things like, "Here, Mom, these are for you." Furthermore, she asserted that not once had he ever requested their return or suggested she had acquired them through improper means. As evidence, she noted that the items had remained undisturbed in her residence for many years, a claim her husband, Joe Bryant, corroborated in his own sworn statement. He recounted an instance in 2005 while the Lakers were in Philadelphia for a game, when he and Pamela presented the entire collection to Kobe and Vanessa in an upstairs room of their house. Joe's testimony stated that the couple appeared completely indifferent and rejected proposals to have the memorabilia displayed in their home in California. Joe also pointed to moving manifests from 1996, which he argued proved the items were transported to Pennsylvania with the family's possessions as gifts, distinguishing them from loaned property. To bolster their case, Pamela's own mother, Mildred Cox, submitted a legal declaration that affirmed every detail of their account. In essence, the narrative put forth by the parents was straightforward. Kobe had given them these items as presents, and he had never made any attempt to reclaim them. They argued that both he and Vanessa had viewed the collection in 2005 and expressed no concern, only for them to turn around years later when Pamela planned to leverage those gifts for a home purchase. It was only then, they alleged, that Kobe and Vanessa abruptly branded the memorabilia as stolen goods and perjured themselves in court. But the family fissure deepened when Kobe's sister, Sharia Washington, aligned herself with her brother. She submitted her own statement, attesting that she had personally heard Pamela talk about monetizing Kobe-related possessions and had even returned other items to her brother, fearing they too would be put up for sale. The schism tore the family apart, playing out publicly through filings in federal court. The conflict revolved around a central, unresolvable question. Were these possessions gifts, or were they merely on loan? His parents argued they were gifts, citing their years of uninterrupted possession, $90,000 spent on storage, and the complete absence of any demand for their return. Kobe and Vanessa countered that they were priceless personal mementos intended for their children and grandchildren. Pamela's assertion that Vanessa's sworn testimony was riddled with falsehoods stood as the most pointed and direct public accusation Joe and Pamela ever officially made against their daughter-in-law. A settlement was finally reached by June 10, 2013. A mere 6 pieces, among them 2 high school uniforms and a pair of championship rings, proceeded to auction. Approximately 90% of the original collection was pulled from the sale. In the aftermath, Joe and Pamela released a unified public apology, stating, "We regret our actions and statements related to the Kobe Bryant auction memorabilia. We apologize for any misunderstanding and unintended pain we have caused our son and appreciate the financial support he has provided over the years." The court battle had concluded, but the familial bond was shattered. In 2016, Kobe acknowledged that nearly 3 years had passed without a single word exchanged with his parents. And when he spoke of the ordeal publicly, the resentment was palpable. He recounted to ESPN, "Our relationship is garbage. I say, I'm gonna buy you a very nice home. And the response is, that's not good enough. Then you're selling my history." The man who once idolized his father now found it agonizing even to speak of him. Questioned on camera about Joe Bryant, Kobe's reply was terse and subdued. "Unfortunately, we don't talk much. You know, maybe down the road that relationship will be better. But right now, it's not much of one." This was the true price of the memorabilia war. A son and his parents irrevocably broken over rings, jerseys, and the impossible question of whose truth was real. Yet the lawsuit over memorabilia, which transpired in 2013, occurred a full decade after the incident that threatened to dismantle both Kobe's career and his marriage. The case in Colorado and its fallout, every crisis examined thus far, the alienation from his family, the legal battle over his legacy, the conflict with Karl Malone, the turmoil within the locker room, all of these events unfolded in the shadow of the one catastrophic incident that would define and damage Kobe Bryant's life more than any other: the sexual assault allegation of 2003. On June 30th of that year, Kobe checked into the Lodge and Spa at Cordillera Resort in Eagle, Colorado, to prepare for a scheduled knee surgery. It was there that a 19-year-old hotel employee claimed an encounter that began with consensual flirting violently escalated into rape inside his hotel room. Her account detailed how Kobe allegedly obstructed her from leaving, forcibly groped her, and bent her over a chair, assaulting her as she protested. The assault, she stated, resulted in vaginal tears and bruises on her neck. When first questioned by detectives, Kobe denied any sexual contact had occurred. However, his story shifted dramatically after he was confronted with the existence of DNA evidence, specifically his semen and the accuser's blood discovered on his shirt. He then admitted to intercourse but vehemently maintained it was consensual. On July 18, 2003, he was formally charged with felony sexual assault, a crime that carried a potential sentence of life in prison. Soon after, Kobe Bryant stood before a wall of cameras, his wife Vanessa at his side, and addressed the world. "I'm innocent. No, I sit here before you all, utterly disgusted with myself." He clarified that his shame stemmed not from an act of violence, but from infidelity. "I am ashamed for my transgression of adultery." Then, before the entire world, he faced Vanessa on camera. "You know, I love my wife with everything I have. She is my foundation." And Vanessa remained silent and unmoving. She did not speak. She did not walk away. Media outlets observed she was adorned with a $4 million diamond ring, an item Kobe had specially commissioned. It was later established that the order preceded the scandal, yet in the court of public opinion, it was widely seen as a gift of atonement. That ring ignited a firestorm of its own. Detractors labeled it a payoff for silence, suggesting Vanessa's allegiance was for sale. Her defenders argued she stood by her husband out of genuine belief in him. The defense strategy was a relentless assault on the accuser's character, exposing her history with mental health and her past sexual encounters, which resulted in her identity being leaked repeatedly, defying Colorado's rape shield laws. On September 1st, 2004, prosecutors let the charges go after the woman declined to take the stand, citing the profound emotional trauma and the campaign of death threats she had endured. A civil case was resolved privately in 2005, culminating in a statement from Kobe that remains a subject of intense debate. He admitted that while he was convinced the interaction was mutual, he had come to understand that she saw the event in an entirely different light. Many years later, Kobe looked back on the ordeal during an interview, explaining how the criminal proceedings had irrevocably altered him. Well, I think it tests the very core of who you are as a human being. To be forced to endure something of that magnitude. He revealed that the experience compelled him to face a profound reckoning, not merely as an athlete, but as a man and a member of his family. It wasn't just on an individual level. It was, as a family, and then, for the entire Lakers organization and for my teammates. It was incredibly tough. He explained how the game of basketball served as his sole anchor during the most turbulent time in his life, saying, "Because I've been playing since I was 2 years old. So, for me, the court has always been my sanctuary. It was always the place where I could find refuge." Throughout the entire firestorm, Vanessa remained by his side, and that singular choice would become the most divisive aspect of her public identity. In certain quarters, she was heralded for her unwavering loyalty, a wife who trusted her husband and supported him through the deepest crisis he would ever face. Elsewhere, she was cast as a knowing accomplice in a cover-up, a woman who had exchanged her silence for a life of luxury and prominence. Following Kobe's death in 2020, the Me Too movement reignited public discourse about the Colorado incident, casting a complex shadow over his memorials and tributes. The very woman who had stood beside him during that infamous press conference was now the sole custodian of his entire legacy. Publicly, Vanessa never faltered in her position on the matter. While she admitted to his infidelity, she steadfastly defended his innocence. And regardless of what truly transpired inside that Colorado hotel room, her decision to remain with him would chart the course for everything that came after: the family, the immense fortune, and the bitter feuds. In the wake of Kobe's passing came the legal battles, the stewardship of his legacy, and the questions that still linger. On January 26, 2020, Kobe Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, perished in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California, alongside 7 other people. Vanessa was left with an estate estimated to be worth as much as $600 million, instantly positioning her among the most affluent women in the world of sports. And in that instant, the weight of every unanswered question about her, every single accusation, every rumor, and every fractured family relationship fell squarely upon her shoulders. The legal challenges mounted swiftly and relentlessly. In 2020, Vanessa's own mother, Sophia Lane, filed a lawsuit against her for $5 million in back pay, alleging she had been an unpaid nanny and personal assistant for many years. The suit also claimed that Kobe had pledged to support her financially for the rest of her life. Vanessa's rebuttal was both immediate and brutal. She labeled the lawsuit a disgrace, countering that her mother only babysat from time to time and had already been given more than $1 million in financial help. She further accused Sophia of trying to extort her family in the shadow of an immense tragedy. In the court of public opinion, support for Vanessa was nearly unanimous. The timing of the lawsuit, just months after the loss of Kobe and Gigi, was seen by most as unconscionably cruel. While the case was settled privately in 2021, the legal battle between mother and daughter exposed a much larger issue. It revealed a recurring pattern of financial conflicts that seemed to shadow Vanessa at every turn, from the memorabilia dispute with Kobe's parents to the lawsuit from her own mother. This pattern included the wrongful death lawsuit against the pilot's estate and Island Express, which was settled out of court in 2021, and then came the lawsuit over crash site photos in 2020. Vanessa took legal action against Los Angeles County upon discovering that sheriff's deputies and firefighters had captured and circulated horrific photographs from the crash site, including images of the remains of Kobe and Gianna. The subsequent trial in 2022 brought to light a deliberate effort to conceal the truth. It was revealed that Sheriff Alex Villanueva had instructed deputies to delete the photos from their phones, and testimonies were fraught with inconsistencies. Furthermore, protocols for preserving evidence had been blatantly disregarded. A jury awarded Vanessa $16 million, a figure that was later increased to a final settlement of $28.85 million in 2023, with the funds being donated to the Mamba and Mambacita Sports Foundation. This case laid bare profound systemic failings inside the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, encompassing accusations of clandestine deputy gangs and the destruction of evidence. The legal battles continued with a 2023 lawsuit filed by Molly Carter, who had once served as president of Kobe Incorporated. Carter alleged she was owed a 2% share of the Body Armor Drink Company, a stake valued at approximately $400 million following its acquisition by Coca-Cola. Vanessa maintained that no such promise was ever made. As the case unfolded, deeply offensive text messages sent by Carter came to light. In these messages, she had purportedly called Kobe insane, used demeaning language to describe the Bryant children's physical appearances, and made racist comments about Black and Asian people. Vanessa prevailed in court, and Carter was mandated to pay $1.5 million to cover legal expenses. Amid all these public battles, the fractured relationship with Joe and Pamela Bryant continued to be an open wound. Just before Kobe's passing, there had been glimmers of a potential reconciliation. Observers, including coach Wayne Slappy, recounted seeing Kobe and his father Joe embracing at a basketball camp in Santa Barbara. In the aftermath of the crash, it was reported that Vanessa had invited Joe and Pamela to the memorial service, but any potential healing process was tragically cut short and would remain unfinished. In July of 2024, Joe Bryant passed away from a stroke at the age of 69. For years, he had largely refrained from making public statements. Upon his death, Vanessa shared a tribute on Instagram, a statement whose power lay as much in its omissions as in its words. Sending our condolences upon hearing the news of my father-in-law's passing. We hoped things would have been different. Although the times we spent together were few, he was always sweet and nice to be around. Kobe loved him very much. We hoped things would have been different. That single line held the weight of it all. The wedding that his parents refused to attend, the bitter lawsuit over memorabilia, the long years of estrangement, and the sworn legal documents where they accused one another of dishonesty. It encapsulated 2 decades of a family unable to mend its fractures. And even then, the public debates surrounding Vanessa were far from over. Following Joe's death, cultural critic Dr. Umar Johnson posted a video tirade online. In it, he charged Vanessa with prioritizing white-centric causes and organizations at the expense of the Black community. He argued this was happening despite her inheriting a fortune built by a Black man. Meanwhile, unrelenting rumors of a pregnancy emerged in 2025 and resurfaced in 2026, alleging she was carrying a child with a new romantic partner. An exasperated Vanessa put an end to the rumors on Instagram, clearly worn down after more than 2 decades of enduring this type of invasive speculation. The discourse on the Joe Budden podcast perfectly encapsulated the public sentiment surrounding that rumor. As the pregnancy story made the rounds, the host engaged in a debate about whether a widow should even be permitted to find new love. She said, "I'm enjoying my summer, not pregnant." You know, basically, I'm not even addressing the rest of it. But then one of the hosts verbalized what many people were privately thinking. In life, she can. She's supposed to move on. She can live her life and stuff like that. I mean, it's been 5 years. Yet, he instantly negated his own point by invoking the unwritten social code. Whatever state of mind I find myself in, that isn't Kobe. But the central question remains, and that is the world Vanessa Bryant continues to occupy in 2026. She now directs the Mamba and Mambacita Sports Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting underserved athletes and championing young women in athletics. In her capacity as Chief Executive Officer of Granity Studios, she dedicated the Kobe and Vanessa Bryant Family Court at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach during February of 2026. She is raising 4 daughters, with Natalia attending the University of Southern California while Bianca and Capri are in school, all while managing an estimated net worth between $600 and $800 million, and having weathered a housekeeper's lawsuit claiming verbal mistreatment in 2009. She endured a $5 million lawsuit filed by her own mother. She withstood the public battle over memorabilia. She survived the ordeal in Colorado. She survived the cataclysmic crash. And after navigating it all, the question that shadows her is the very one that ignited this entire narrative. Who truly is Vanessa Bryant? And what was the authentic price paid by the people in Kobe's orbit? His own parents claimed she cost them their relationship with their son. Karl Malone's public remarks hinted that she lacked the respect of the National Basketball Association's inner circle. The housekeeper depicted her as cruel and unreasonably demanding. Her own mother alleged she was profoundly ungrateful. And yet Kobe, the one man who chose her above all others, called her his absolute foundation. The reality of who she is likely exists in the gray space between these conflicting portrayals. However, the sheer volume of individuals pointing fingers in her direction over so many years is in itself telling. Whether Vanessa Bryant was ultimately a victim or an instigator, her biography is inseparable from Kobe's and from the profound devastation he left in his wake. We appreciate you joining us. If this documentary resonated with you, please select one of the videos now appearing on your screen to explore more stories like this one.